Hey there, this is a video on general advice for progression in the game Mobile Legends Adventure. Some of the most asked questions I see on the subreddit are what teams or heroes should I build? Is this character worth it? Help me make teams with the characters I have. Since I see these kinds of questions so often, I decided to make this video to address those kinds of questions. Obviously, my advice will be very different depending on where you're at in the game, so I'll be making separate videos for different progression stages, and this video is targeted towards newer players. I think if you're anywhere between just finishing up the tutorial to having less than 5 awakened heroes, this video is for you. And since this video is geared towards newer players, I'm going to say a few things about the game that might seem pretty obvious in the beginning. So, this is an AFK gacha game. The first part, AFK, means that one of the main ways of obtaining resources in this game is letting time pass. Often, you'll find that a stage in front of you is very difficult, and you just can't beat it no matter what hero combinations you use. The best thing you can do at this point is most likely logging out for the day and let time pass, especially in the early game, and you'll do this quite often. Tomorrow, when you log on again, you'll have accumulated enough resources, hopefully, in the meantime, to be able to level up and gain stats to hopefully beat the same stage with much greater ease. And because you'll do this so often, this is the kind of game that rewards short but consistently timed play sessions. So if you're the kind of person who can spare maybe 10 minutes every day, you'll find that this game will fit pretty well in your schedule. But if you're the kind of person who doesn't have a lot of time usually, but can put in 6 hours during the weekends, then you might find that you will struggle to progress. Now, the second part of AFK gacha is gacha, which means that the other main way you obtain resources in this game is through gacha mechanics, which are inherently random, and you'll feel the randomness the most in the early game. This can be particularly frustrating as a player, also as someone who's making guides, because I can tell you about all the heroes that are very powerful and you should build, but it doesn't really guarantee that you will have these heroes and have enough copies to keep on building them. But luckily for you early game players, I'm here to tell you that it doesn't really matter what hero you build in the early game, or at least in the early game, what heroes you build matter the least. So there are a couple of reasons for this. The first is that since you're so early in the game, there are just a lot of skills that are not even unlocked for you yet. So what makes a hero good or bad might not even be relevant because it just doesn't exist. And the second thing is that since you're so early in the game, leveling up can be really fast. And the best way to progress in the early game is through the raw stats of leveling up rather than hero powers or synergies, because it's just so much easier to level up. Now, whether your heroes are good or bad will matter later on when these conditions start to go away, when you do unlock more of a hero's kit and leveling up becomes more expensive. But this is going to happen a good while away and you're not there yet. And this video is to help you to actually get to that point where whether a hero is good or bad will actually matter. So what I think you really should be doing now is trying to get 5 heroes awakened as fast as you can while picking up copies of the stronger heroes wherever is convenient. Now, it's not super important which 5 these are, as long as there is 1 or 2 frontline heroes and at least 1 damage dealer. The reason why you want to rush these 5 is because until you reach Awaken, your max hero level scales off of the rank of your top 5 heroes. And as I said before, leveling up and gaining stats should be your main source of power at this stage in the game. To maximize the speed at which you rank up these 5 heroes, they should ideally be 1 of each type. That is to say, the type on the left over here, Elemental Tech, Martial, Light, and Dark. And There are a couple reasons for this. So there are a couple images over here to illustrate how heroes are ranked up, how they reach Awaken. On the top left over here is how you rank up SR heroes, so the blue heroes that you get all the time from summons. And in the middle is basic SSR heroes, so non-hybrid SSR heroes. And these are the heroes that you are most likely going to be building a lot of at this stage. On the bottom left, you have how you rank up SSR hybrid heroes, and then Order and Chaos heroes on the top right, and UR heroes on the bottom right. So what you'll notice about these SSR heroes is that they have these little profile icon things in their progression, and they represent basically any hero that is of the corresponding rank and type. And this means that what you can do is fuse your SR hero, your much more common heroes that you just will never use, and slot them into feeding them into ranking up your SSR heroes. This makes it so that SSR heroes that are non-hybrid are much cheaper to rank up because of the fact that you can use your food heroes. And because they have to be of the same type as each other, you want to utilize every single type, so you should build one SSR hero of all the 5 types. And it's worth noting that wherever you can use SR hero, you should never use an SSR in these slots. This defeats the whole purpose of being able to use any hero in these slots, and actually makes it more expensive if you feed SSR heroes into this slot. And you might need that hero later, even if you think the hero is bad now. And in the very late game, you want to max out all the heroes anyway for something called the Eagle statue. Now, if by the time you're watching this video, you have already invested into 5 heroes, I think it might be best for you to stick to them. But if you haven't yet, or all your heroes are below 8 stars or 3 red stars, consider swapping to some of the heroes I'm recommending. Even though obtaining heroes through gachas random, buying copies of them in the market is not. The dungeon shop is, I think, the best shop for obtaining heroes in the early game. Mostly because it contains 2 of the most powerful heroes you can get at this time. First of which is Angela, who is arguably the most powerful basic type hero in the game. And she is still very strong when compared to a lot of the Order and Chaos heroes. So what her ultimate does is that she will instantly charge one of your allies' energy to max. So this skill effectively makes one of your most powerful allies cast their ultimate twice as often as they otherwise would have. And also her 4th skill can charm an enemy in the beginning of a match, and it will happen multiple times throughout the match. And as you play with her more and unlock more of her kit, you'll find that she also buffs your attack, among other things. So definitely worthy unit to get your hands on. The second powerful hero in here, I think, is going to be Odette, who is a light mage who specializes in damage dealing. So her ultimate sends out this big ball that bounces around all of the enemies and deals a whole bunch of damage. And she does a little bit of control with the sleep debuff. But what makes her really special is that whenever an enemy is put to sleep, she gains a little bit of energy that helps her to charge her ultimate, which makes her a great pairing with another hero purchasable in the Brawl Shop called Lilia. And what Lilia can do is, with her ultimate, she can cast this big AoE of sleep into the enemies, and it can oftentimes cover the whole enemy team, so all 5 enemy heroes. Because of the fact that Odette gains energy whenever an enemy is put to sleep, she basically instantly recharges Odette's energy bar, and she gets to ult immediately and cast that big bouncy ball and deal a whole bunch of damage. And as you unlock more of both of their kits, they start to have more synergies with sleep, so they keep on becoming stronger together. It's really great that both of them are available in different shops, so you can get your hands on them very early to start building a very powerful duo. You'll probably find that between every single dungeon shop reset, which happens around once a month, you have more currency than you can spend on just these two heroes. So you'll probably want to consider getting a third hero. So I think all of the other heroes on here are okay, but if you really can't decide, consider consulting this tier list that I put up over here. So again, you'll see this tier list reflects that Angela and Odette should be your first priorities, and all of the rest are sort of decent. So I think anybody in the third row is a reasonable choice because they're not terrible. And everybody in the fourth row are just, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a bad investment since you're so early, but you're most likely not going to use any of these heroes later on in the game. If I really had to pick one in this list, I'd pick Gord, because Gord is very powerful in some of the game modes where you're really just focused on dealing damage. But back to the Brawl Shop. The thing with the Brawl Shop is that since it resets daily instead of monthly like the Dungeon Shop, what you want to do here is try to get copies of one singular hero as often as you can instead of splitting your resources between multiple. Now, I've already mentioned Lilia, but if you're not building the Odette-Lilia combo for some reason, Nana might be a better choice, because what she does is, with her ultimate, she can resurrect allies who are already dead. Resurrections are always an interesting ability when you're playing any game mode where an ally could die, which is most of the game modes. And it's a very rare ability. Not a lot of heroes can resurrect another hero. There's only this hero and another very expensive hero who can do that at this point in the game. And since she's resurrecting ally with her ultimate, it's important that she stays alive to resurrect that hero. If she's the person who's first to die in a match, this skill essentially becomes useless. So you do want stats on her, which is why you want to make sure you rank her up if you want to build her. But again, if you're going with Odette-Lilia combo, keep on going with the Lilia, and after you max her out, go with Nana. Another good place to get copies of heroes is through events. Now, events are a little bit less predictable than getting heroes to the market because you don't always know what's going to be up for grabs in the event shop. Also, it does mean that you will have to play a little bit more actively if you're going for heroes in the event shop, because events do go away. That's what events are. And as a general rule for what's available in the event shop is they have some selection of Order and Chaos heroes at a higher price, and then some selection of basic type heroes in the shops. For this particular event that's active right now, there are 4 Order and Chaos available, and there's every single basic type hero available. My advice for these kinds of events is if you're thinking about playing this game for a very long time, go for the Order and Chaos heroes. I'll talk about what Order and Chaos hero you should be investing in, and just about the topic in general towards the end of the video. But if you think that you might not be playing this game for a very long time, you should probably get your hands on one of the basic heroes. The reason for that is because Order and Chaos heroes, you gain copies of them not to build them now, but to get a head start on them later. And it's going to be a better long-term investment, but if you don't think that you're going to be playing for the long term, it doesn't make sense to make long-term investments, which is why you should focus on the basic type heroes instead, the ones that you're actually going to use now. Now, as for the basic heroes, I think your first pick should always be a copy of Angela. Maybe if you max out your Angela, or there's no Angela available in the shop, then the second thing you should go for is anyone who you're actively using and who is very close to reaching the next rank. Other than that, it doesn't really make too much of a difference. And if you really have to choose, pick someone from the wish list, which I'm going to talk about later. The market and the event shops are so good because they offer guaranteed and non-luck based progression instead of luck-based progression like the summons. But since so much of your game is already luck-based, it's important to talk about how you're summoning. So the best summon and the place where you should be spending most of your gems on should be the premium summon or the most basic summon, the 2500 gem summon. Summons like the miracle summon are just straight up less valuable than the basic premium summon, and stuff like the sacred oath, which you unlock later, is just for heroes that are too expensive to be realistically investing in the early game. So that's why premium summon is just the best. If you didn't notice before, there's a little wishlist tab on the bottom right over here, and it allows you to pick which 5-star heroes you're going to be pulling the most in the premium summons. This wishlist I pulled up over here is the wishlist suggested for beginners from the official Discord server for this game. And I didn't have any part in making this list. However, I do think it's a pretty good list. So what you want to do here is start with the list on the left. As you slowly max hero out, replace them with heroes on the right. It also happens to be a pretty decent tier list for what kind of heroes are bad or not. So it's going to be separated into 3 tiers. So the best are going to be on the left, the decent ones are going to be on the right, and the bad ones are going to be not on the list at all. It's also possible that someone might not be on the list because they don't exist yet at the time of recording, which is February of 2025. So if you want the most updated tier list for this game, a wish list for this game, you should go visit the Discord server, and I'll link an invite for that in the description below. Now, it's possible that you might already be investing into 5 heroes that are not on the list and want to continue to invest into them, in which case you'll want to replace some of them. So I'll be giving 2 suggestions for heroes in each row for you to replace, should you wish to do so. It's worth pointing out that hybrid heroes belong to multiple types, so instead of removing them from the list outright, you can just move them to the other type instead. Now, since hybrid heroes are, as a general rule, better than non-hybrid heroes, it's probably always worth it to move it to a different type instead of completely removing them. Okay, so to start off with the elementals, Hylos the Centaur is the first to go, and after that, I think you should replace Valier. In tech, I would first replace Atlas, and then either Arcus Mia or Ultio Eris, mostly because since they're both damage dealers, you don't really need both of them on your account at this point. And as for Marshall, I would replace Irithel and Wanwan. In terms of light, I replace Natalia first. After that, I'd replace Astral Cipra because Mecha Layla is stronger in the early game. And as for dark, I would replace first Farza, and then if you're not building the Odette Lilia combo, I'd replace Lilia. And after that, I would replace Miracle Clara. Unless you don't have any copies of her yet, then I would replace Selena. After you gain a single copy of Miracle Clara, I will replace her out. You might have noticed that some heroes on this list have a white border around them. What this means is that these heroes are considered to be so good that after maxing out your first one, it might be a good idea for you to build another copy of them as a duplicate. Personally, I think building duplicates makes boring gameplay, so I've never done it myself. However, it can be a decent upgrade to power on your account if you have multiple copies of very strong heroes. And heroes who don't have a white border doesn't necessarily mean that they're not as good as the ones with the white border. It might mean that even though they're very good, it just doesn't make sense to have as many copies of them. Or they might be a hybrid hero, which means it's impossible to build multiple copies of them because the game just won't let you. Whether to build dupes or not is not going to be a decision you have to make in the early game. It's more of a mid-game decision, so I'll be covering it in my mid-game video, after you awaken your first hero, you'll unlock something called Prophecy Summon. And this is essentially a slightly more expensive, but much more targeted premium summon. It's going to be quite significantly better because the way it works is you can select a basic type hero, and whenever you summon a 5-star, it's guaranteed to be that 5-star. However, you're limited in how many copies of this hero you can pull every reset, which is approximately once a month. And the number of 5-stars you can pull from this is dependent on how many awakened heroes you currently have. As you can see here, I have 92 awakened heroes, and I have it all the way maxed out at 6 chances to summon. Now, you probably have less than 5 awakened hero at this point, so you're only going to be able to use this once. So what you want to do is have enough gems to use all of your tickets for Prophecy Summon every single month, and then after that splurge all your gems in Premium Summon. I think the best use of the Prophecy Summon for you at this point is to finish up awakening the heroes that you've been trying to get to awaken, and then after that try to use this to help boost hybrid heroes to awaken. As I've shown you before, since hybrid heroes can't use food to rank up the way non-hybrid heroes can, they need a little bit of an extra boost to help them reach awaken. And I think this is the best place to do that. This is the best place to get consistent copies of a single hero. I think the best hybrid heroes to go for first are Arcus Mia for damage, or Miracle Clara, or Naiad Rafaela for survivability. While you're rushing 5 heroes to awaken, you should be picking up a lot of copies of other heroes along the way. Most of them will be pretty unusable since their rank will be significantly lower, so they'll have lower stats and deal less damage and die more quickly. However, there are some heroes worth looking out for that are still quite good, even at very low investments. These heroes are mostly heroes who can cast their skill very early on, or their skills persist throughout the game even after they're dead. So this means that they don't have to have enough stats to survive on the field for very long to be very useful. The first hero that fits in such a category, I think, is Miracle Clara. So Miracle Clara's 4th skill gives all of your allies death immunity the first time they're about to die in any match. This skill is incredibly helpful when you're in certain matchups where you might be getting one-shot. So it will give you that little bit of a time to heal back up from the burst damage and have a little bit more of a fighting chance. Second hero I like to point out is going to be Harley. So what Harley does in the beginning of the match is, with his 2nd skill, he throws out a little hat, and it will exile a very powerful enemy for a couple of seconds. Sometimes in a match, you'll find that one of your enemies is very threatening to your team, while the rest are just kind of weak. So Harley will help in those matchups to lock down that one enemy, so you can try to finish off some other members of the enemy team before the threatening enemy pop backs up again, so you'll have a little bit of a bigger advantage going into that encounter. The third hero I want to point out is going to be Fanny. So what Fanny does is, with her 3rd skill, she will pull an enemy who's closest to your side of the arena to the opposite side. This is especially good going against certain heroes like Lancelot or Saber or Alucard, as shown here, who will dive into your back line in the beginning of the match, and she will counter that almost completely by dragging them back in. Now, heroes like Hayabusa or X-Borg, who also dive, are not countered by this mechanic because they gain on-target ability or control immunity in the beginning of the match. So that's worth looking out for. However, in the early game, you will not be going against them as much as Lancelot and Sabers and Alucards. So she's still
I will not let you down.
A decent one to look out for. The 4th one I'm going to point out, and probably the last one, is going to be Rista.
There are
So
no secrets in the world, only information.
Rista's second skill gives one of your allies an attack buff and an energy regeneration buff at the cost of slowly losing their HP all the time. Now the cost of it is very real. Losing HP is very bad. But the buff is just so good that it's definitely worth the cost. A lot of matches are determined by who can cast their first ultimate, and Rista is able to give you that initiative in those kinds of matches. And she will cast this skill multiple times throughout the match, so eventually she can cover your whole team with the attack buff. But she will prioritize, in my experience, the hero right in front of her first. So whoever you want to ult first, place that in front of Rista to gain that advantage as early as you can. After talking about Rista, it's as good time as any to talk about Order, Chaos, and Astral Heroes. Now, it wasn't that long ago when Astral Heroes just straight up didn't exist. As you can see here, at the time of recording, there are only 4 Astral Heroes available in the game. And we used to call these more premium heroes OC Heroes for Order and Chaos. But I guess now it's going to be OCA Heroes, or OCA Heroes, if you will. OCA Heroes are much more premium heroes, and as a general rule, they're stronger and they're much more expensive. For the price of awakening 1 OCA hero, you can probably awaken 3 other basic heroes. So for the early game, it's just not worth it to try to build Order and Chaos heroes because it costs so much. However, since you will be shifting your focus to OCA heroes towards the late game, you want to try to pick up as many copies as you can to get a head start on that later on. Again, this is going to be a long-term investment, so if you're not sure if you're going to be playing for all that long, it doesn't make sense to make long-term investments. So you can ignore these heroes entirely if that's the case. The best place to pick up these heroes is again in the markets. So there are a couple of selections of OCA heroes available in the markets. And the first one you'll unlock is probably Dungeons Nightmare Mode, which will give you access to a copy of Karamet and Amaterasu every single shop reset. I have personally never had so few currency that I wasn't able to buy both of them during a reset. So I never had to choose between either of them. But if you somehow end up in a situation where you can't get enough currency to get both of them and have to choose, I'd say pick whoever you like, or whoever is the prettiest, because it doesn't make that much of a difference. Karamet and Amaterasu are both around the same level in terms of power, and they fulfill approximately the same role in the team. Karamet is an AoE damage dealer, and Amaterasu is more of a single target damage dealer. So go with whoever you have the most copies of already if you really have to choose. As for Brawl Shop, you do get to unlock Martis or Jask. However, the problem with the Brawl Shop is that they cost the same currency as all of the other basic heroes. It means that it's going to be a little bit more competitive since they're competing with every single other choice on this list. Whereas in the Dungeon Shop, Karamet and Amaterasu are not. And since they're worth almost 2 Lilias or 2 Nanas, you should probably just stick with basic heroes instead. And it doesn't help the fact that both of these heroes are some of the worst Chaos heroes you can get your hands on. But if you really, really want to buy a Chaos hero, I think Jask is just better to get, because Jask is quite significantly better than Martis. Another place you'll be able to get Order and Chaos heroes later on is going to be, where is it? The Cactus Shop, all the way in the bottom. So this shop lets you buy Oberon, Rista, Zeno, Ana, and Yu Zhang. Out of all these heroes, I think Rista is the best. She will cost a little bit more than 3 of the other heroes, but I think she's going to be worth the extra. Now as for events, you will be able to get some Order and Chaos heroes through them, but since every single event offers different Order and Chaos hero pools, it's a little bit tricky to tell you which ones to get. So I made this tier list for picking OCA Heroes. So all of these heroes are, I think, pretty good OCA Heroes, and ones that I've seen in events in the past and who don't appear in the shops. So everybody on this list is a strong pick if you were to purchase that hero. However, I made a list for them in terms of who you think you should go for first. But this wish list is kind of an illusion because most of them fulfill different roles in the team. So it's a little bit tricky to compare a tank versus a support, but I've sorted them out here in order of versatility. So Akashic and Feng will fit in any team basically, but heroes on the bottom of the list like Char or Chartore may need a little bit of a more specific setup for them to perform very well. But like I said before, anybody on this list at all is going to be a strong pick. And if an event has a hero pool that doesn't include anybody on this list, you should buy the Order of Chaos hero who is not available in one of the shops already. The early game is the section of the game that will pass by the fastest, so it would be nice to get a preview of what's going to happen next. After a little while, you'll encounter certain boss stages that will require you to have multiple teams. So right now over here I have 6, but it's going to start with 2 and 3 and slowly 4, 5, and all the way in the very late game you'll have 6 teams. This means that your hero roster needs to become bigger and better, and you'll unlock a lot of things like soul vessels or lunomancy or lay cards and glory gems and artifacts. So heroes' kit and their synergies between each other will start to matter more, and raw power from leveling up will start to diminish. And this will be the time for you to sort out between which heroes are good heroes and which heroes are bad heroes. Your team right now should be just a mixture of heroes with high star levels, and then as you move toward the mid game, it will be mostly a conglomerate of heroes that are very strong, but perhaps they don't have the best synergies with each other. Until in the very late game, you will try to push your team towards actual teams that have synergies with each other. Again, this stage of the game is all about gaining stats as fast as you can, and in the meantime, pick up as many copies of heroes from the wish list so you'll have an easier time transitioning into mid-game. Now, if you want to hear what I have to say about mid-game, and the mid-game is going to be the proper focus of probably the next video I'm going to make. So, I don't know when that's going to come out, but stay tuned if you're interested. Alright, that's all for this one. Bye-bye.